Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of MindFit Podcast. My name is Robert Aceves, and I'm here with Neil Babins. How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. This has been a very interesting week for me. I've been doing a lot of work with people, and this week one of my meditations went viral. So I am super happy about that. I thought it was, I thought it was amazing because I just to think that I have thousands of people this week meditating and sleeping much better. It just makes my life better, in some way. I feel like, I did something good this week. One of my favorite comments, by the way, I got from this lady named Nancy, and she said that, she slept for 7 hours, and she said, thank you so much. That is a lot for me, and you've no idea how amazing I feel because of you. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Nancy. So, but that, that is a great feeling. So how was your week?
My week was great. I've had a lot of work as well, and haven't had anything go viral except for a lot of people have been focusing on the current pandemic and the lockdown and how long is this going to go on for, and it's people are finding new ways to deal with it, new ways to process it, new ways to to process what's going on around them, and it's been really interesting to see how people take the new paradigm and use it to their best. After they go through a very difficult hump, they sort of overcome it, and that their own new normal, within their own bubble starts to form, and it's becoming more microcosmic. A lot of people are starting to develop a new normal, new paradigm within their own bubble, within their own family, or whomever they're sheltering with, and it's really interesting to see. It's tough, so it's draining. So my week's been good but long, and I'm looking forward to getting up to the mountains again. I'm going away another week and a half, and I just
That's
I keep
nice.
staring at the cabin. I keep looking at the pictures of it. People I'm going with saying I can't wait to get up there, and there's a jacuzzi, and I need some refresh time myself.
Hey, yeah,
So,
same here.
yeah.
I really do too. I think vacation right now is really important for a lot of people, and I feel like it's really hard to get out of this whole mess, because wherever you go, there's going to be somewhere that you can't go, so you have to go to the nature, and I went hiking on Tuesday, and there were a lot of people on this hike that I went through. So it's really we're going back to nature in some way, and I like that. So, and speaking of that, today we're going to be talking about this article that I found online that I thought was very interesting. Interesting and sad at the same time. It's basically it said it's from the UK, the UK Daily. And it talks about how we have, there was a study that was done back and published back in May. And it says that we basically have a 10% chance of survival, and that we have a 90% chance of collapse within the decades, within the next 2 decades, thanks to deforestation. And this is something that is very scary in some ways, I guess. So, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you tell me I have a 10% chance of survival, and yes, that's a very scary proposition. Well, it's probably, and I'm gonna throw this out there theoretically, probably a very negatively polarized viewpoint of the near future of the human race, but it's probably pointing out some very important concepts that we should take a closer look at, a much closer look at, and not just talk about, not just throw talking points out there and like statuses on Facebook type of thing, to actually take action. And I think you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the article, change our model, change our view of our paradigm of actually how we implement things on a regular basis. Because what's going on right now is one big, massive, huge distraction. I mean, of course it is. It's taking up most of our lives because it's shutting down most of our lives, at least here in California. And it's taking us away from all these other main points that are going on all around us, have been for decades, but are still. So it's a relatively negative viewpoint, and it polarizes that negative viewpoint, but maybe there's a way we can sort of, bring the pendulum a little bit more to the center to give people a little bit of hope and direction in terms of what
Yeah.
to do about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the one of the biggest things that they say is that back in the day, we had over 60 million square kilometers of forestation, on the planet. Now,
Hmm.
because of how we're using, our resources and we're basically cutting trees, we have 40 million square kilometers. And so it's starting to become a problem because a lot of this deforestation started, with the Industrial Revolution and all these different things that we basically our lifestyles are in need of all these resources, and because there's more population, there's more need of these things, and it all goes down to like a lot of different things like our meat eating habits. Like when we eat meat, they need a place for the cows to eat, and so the more meat we need, the more space they need, so the more the forests are cut down so we can have grass, fields, and that's one thing. Then there's also the fact that people, we used to use paper all the time, so technology has come a long way in that sense,
Hmm.
and so we don't use paper as much as we used to, at least in in some countries. Maybe there are other countries that are still using paper, but the whole point of using a cell phone and computers and all that is to not have to use paper in some ways. We can also record more, save our information on computers, so now we can read books on Kindle and things like that, so that's helping a lot. The
Yeah.
one thing that they say on in this article, in this study, is that our biggest problem is we have this uh thinking of like the economy's most important thing, right? So we think about money as the most important thing, and so most of our things are driven by money, and we try to think about capitalism and how you can become very wealthy if you want to, and you work hard, and you start selling things, and then those things become trash, which eventually can harm the planet. So there's all this ideas and things that we have that if we don't change our mindset and our psychology about how we see and view the world, then we're basically
Hmm.
going to end up killing ourselves, because that's what they're saying in this article, is that we're going to get to a point within the next 20 to 40 years. That's what the article says, and that's the craziest part. They're
Hmm.
saying that within 20 to 40 years, if the population keeps growing at the rate that it's growing right now, we're going to be using so many resources at a faster rate, which will eventually collapse. So basically, we're not going to have enough trees to be able to feed more animals, and the animals will die, and then eventually we would die with the animals as well. So it's pretty scary, I think.
It is, it is, and we've been saying this for decades. So I know to a lot of people listening, that's not new news. People have been warned about that by scientists and experts for many, many years, and that's been a political debate, a social debate. And I think that one thing that I observe is that not only has it always been true, but a lot of people, what happens is that it's sort of like lopsided because personally, and I guess I don't mind disclosing this, I happen to be vegan. I went vegan about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago now, and I feel much better. And I was vegetarian before that. And I just find, for example, when I go to a supermarket, an average supermarket, this plays into all of the industries. It's much harder for me to find food to eat, and if I'm watching my sugar, which I am, it's much harder for me to find products that are reasonably priced as well. It's not
Hmm.
impossible. It's become much more plentiful. That is true, but it's not as, you walk into a supermarket, 80 to 90% of what you see is fortified with sugar, is processed, is for the meat eater. So there's sort of like a polarization, like a lopsided, skewed polarization going on. And I find that, and I'm not shouting conspiracy. I'm simply saying that what happens is what's happening right now. Something like COVID hits, the economy shuts down, it turns itself upside down. People are on lockdown, businesses close, everything slows down, as if it's a way to sort of replenish something that was done by what was considered normative. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have a certain way of eating, of consuming, of producing, and then all of a sudden there's a shutdown. In order to slow everything down. And I don't know if that's a pattern I feel comfortable with. I'm not saying COVID was the reason for that. I'm not connecting those dots. I'm simply saying that we ought not to be waiting around for something like a COVID to slow down the processes that you're talking about. We should take a look at what's considered normative. I'm not saying everybody go vegan tomorrow, you know. But I'm saying you're exactly right. There's a link between this industry and that industry and that industry and that industry, and we're on a pendulum. We're on not a treadmill rather. And somebody's got to get off the treadmill. And I don't want a pandemic to be the reason we get off the treadmill. That's my point. So this concerns me as well. So how do we shift the paradigm of so many people without telling them you got to stay home? You can't go to work. You can't go to school. You can't gather in groups of more than 10. You got to wear a mask. How do we change the paradigm without a catastrophe? That's, I think, the major question.
Yeah. No. So according to this article, we have two options. One, we can, continue to improve our technology so that eventually we could just leave this planet and go to another planet and basically do the same thing over there and start all over. Or we can change our mindsets. Yeah, I know. We can change our mindsets and, figure out ways. Like I was thinking, I was a vegetarian for 14 years. And I recently, back in November, I changed, like I mentioned, it was one of our podcasts that I went back to eating meat again because my health was suffering. And so, there are some great things about being vegetarian that I really loved. But now, I'm eating meat again, and I love meat. I love chicken and all this, seafood stuff. But then, at first I was feeling guilty about it. Now I'm back to normal, quote unquote. And now I can understand why, it's so hard for people to understand that we need to go, vegan. Like we all, should be vegan in some way. And that's what a lot of people have predicted, that we're going to have to be vegan in the future or vegetarian. And a lot of companies like, the Impossible Burger company, they're trying to create meat that tastes like meat, but it's not meat, so that people can eventually, stop eating real meat. And, it's starting to change in Canada. There was a 10% decrease in cattle eating food last year. And because of the, the Impossible meats and all this, the Beyond Burger and all those different, fake meats that are coming up in the market. And, a lot of people don't like that, to hear this. They don't care. They don't, they're just whatever. I just want to eat my steak. I want to eat my tacos and, bring it on. But the truth is, we have to start thinking of this, unless we don't care that we're going to go extinct and that's it. And, it could happen. And that's the thing about right now, that when I read this article and you look at the pandemic, like you said, it's like a wake up call. Like, hey, listen, something's going on. We need to do something about this. Another thing that I just recently read that I loved is that because of the pandemic and because of the quarantine and because it happened in the whole world, basically, the earth has stopped vibrating about 50%. That means that things are actually, more quiet, more calm. A lot of, ecosystems are going back to life because we're not, polluting them, basically. So I think those are some great things that are happening. But again, this is because we are the problem. We are, using up these resources that are limited on a regular basis, and and we love it, and we love our lifestyles. And I get it. I'm one of those people. But unless we change, our mindsets and think of ways to change the way we do things, then, we're just headed to the cliff, I guess.
Yeah, well, maybe that's part of the silver lining of what's going on right now, is that we're sort of being, at least in this area of the country, we're sort of being forced to change, forced to look at things differently. Not necessarily with diet, but with almost everything in our lives, which, diet plays a part of. But change is really hard. Change is like, we could do an entire 10 podcasts on change and the resistance to it, and how slowly it happens, and how much, how tumultuous the imposition of change is to people. It's just like you have to rip apart bonds, internally and externally between people, and realign things, and that takes time for people to go through change. If you look at it throughout history, it almost seems, when you look at history, I'm not a historian, but it almost seems that change happened because it had to, as opposed to people made a conscientious effort to say, we're going to do this way now. People started, getting off horses and into, railroad cars or into, automotive vehicles when they became available. So if
Yeah.
whatever becomes available, we sort of gravitate toward. Look at cell phones. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
somebody made a joke to me the other day. They said, don't let yourself, again, the conspiracy theory, don't let yourself get microchipped by the government. And someone said, too late, buddy. Too late, buddy. You have your Samsung, you have your Galaxy, whatever. You have your Android, your iPhone. You're microchipped. They know everything about you, where you are, what you bought, what you're looking at. They could look at you. Um, you know, so, yeah, change is really, really hard. How are you going to tell people, for example, imagine this generation now, put down your cell phones. We're not going to use cell phones anymore. We're going to go back to regular phones. I don't even want to be there in the room when you tell the people that. I mean, so change is really, really difficult. People think that eating meat, like you talked about, and eating all that we eat is the norm. Someone said that, someone mentioned that, they eat a box of Pop Tarts every single night. What's a Pop Tart? Did they have that 200 years ago? It's like almost like or potato chips. Those are staples that we just or French fries. First of all, someone told me that they're not even French. Of course not. But what is a French fry? A French fry is a staple. It's just something we just assume comes with our burger or comes with our sandwich. It's served on the side with a couple sliced pickles. That's a staple that we created. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that the earth was formed with. We socially constructed that, so we can deconstruct it as well. But change is hard because people say you're taking away my freedoms. No, we're asking you to exercise your freedom. Exercise your self agency. What would you like to do instead? People turning toward electric cars or hybrid cars, a lot of people would roll their eyes at that and probably still do, but eventually that's probably going to be what more and more people do, and that's going to become more normative than fuel. And
Yeah,
for good reasons. But it's
totally.
amazing how many people roll their eyes at it first and then say that somebody else is the marginalized one who's doing it first. But that's always the case. Isn't that their old quote? I don't know the exact quote. It said first you're ridiculed and then you're ignored and then you're embraced or something like that. It's like there's stages to change.
Mm-hmm.
At first when you stand up and you're the only one saying it, you're the village idiot, so to speak. You're ostracized. And then eventually they start debating you, and then eventually they start agreeing with you. And
Yeah.
eventually you're embraced as a hero. So that's every movie you've ever seen is like that. Somebody stands up and says no, and that
Yeah.
person is shunned, fired, jailed. Uh, told that a funny meme with somebody crossing their eyes on Facebook. Yeah, because that's really intelligent. Because somebody's saying something you don't want to hear, and then eventually that person becomes, the voice, the first voice of reason. Almost anything you look at where there was major change, that happened first. So I know I'm getting off the topic a bit, but I think that's what's important. And maybe we've lost that spirit because we've been so drained by what's been going on lately, so distracted by what's been going on lately that we don't have a lot of fight left in us, and that scares me even more. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we definitely have to, start looking at things differently. We can't keep, expecting things to be the same way. The problem, I tell you that I've seen, for example, is a lot of people have this idea of, the American family, when you have two kids, you have your house, your car, and, all this amenities, right? And we have that idea and we all, aspire for that. But then, you know, to think, oh, having kids right now is unethical, for example. I've read a lot of studies on that. It's like, we don't want to think that. We don't want to see that. We want to just be able to have kids and be free, like you said, and have the freedom to choose to have kids if we choose to. But then bringing kids to this world right now, the way things are, do you really want to bring kids to this world? How things are going, and do you want to, keep, killing our planet and eventually not have a planet anymore because we're using up all the resources? I mean, it's really, and I get it. Like I said, I'm one of those people that loves taking those showers with, long showers and things like that, and having electricity like all the time. But I've been to countries where, they don't have electricity all the time. They have times when they have electricity and times when they don't. There's times when there's no hot water. You have to shower with cold water. And that's okay. It's norm for a lot of other countries, not for us, but that's the thing. we need to start thinking about these things now before they, become a problem, which they already are a problem, except we are not seeing it. We refuse to see it because we don't like change. Another thing that this article talks about is how, we kind of have to change our mindset to be more communal. We have to, start
Mhm.
accepting that we're not the only ones on this planet, that we have other people, that, it's not just us, it's us and them, and they also, require, certain things like we do, except, we need to start learning to share things, and to be able to survive as a species, no longer, as a country. I mean, we have a lot of rules and regulations in this country, but then, there's other countries as well that need our help, and we also need some help from other countries. We're not the only ones here. So I don't know, changing our mindsets and all that, it sounds scary. It sounds like, something completely out there, but it's going to be a necessity coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, the thing is that I think people got to realize that a lot of people say, in North America, whatever this part of the world, Europe, whatever, is like the central, a central entity, so to speak. But if the entire world, like you're saying, the countries with us rotating electricity and hot water, if everybody, if the entire world, all 7 billion or whatever it is, people on the planet right now lived the way North Americans live, we wouldn't have any resources. They'd be depleted probably in a year. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
there is that lack of evenness, and we have to understand that if even if the rest of the world were to be more like us, unquote, which some people think they ought to, then we wouldn't be able to be like us. We would have to even out because there's just not the resources for the entire planet to live that way. It's just, not that I could back that up with statistics, but that's what it seems to me, based on what this article and others have been saying. So I think what's important though is to offer, and I don't necessarily know what they are, but to offer some sort of systemic solutions for people. Like, what do we do? People might be listening to this and saying, you're absolutely right, but I don't know what I can do. Because as an individual, sometimes you don't feel like you have a lot of sense of control. You can't, sign the bill on the dotted line like the powers that be can do to make changes that are significant. You can do what you can do individually, but, how does a person individually, without having the power of the upper crust, of our society, how does the individual take action? Just by getting an electric car or solar panels on their house, or growing their own vegetables in the backyard. How do they do this? What's the solution to to the issue? What does the individual do? Do they organize? Do they rally? Do they write to their congressman? I just think it's important for people to know what the solutions are.
Hmm.
What they
Yeah.
can do. Yeah, sense of
Yeah, and
control.
and and it's, I feel personally that we have the solutions already. A lot of people talk about these things in movies now, shows. We've seen it in the news. The thing is, like, do we want to change? Do we want to accept that change? Because it sounds so good. It's like I mentioned, I was vegetarian for a long time, 14 years. Now that I'm eating meat again, I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed it so much, right? And now you
Mm.
tell me, why don't you eat vegetarian, something now? And I'm like, I don't know. I've had it for 14 years. I kind of want to have my
Mm.
steak right now. But it's like, if you ask me to go back to being vegetarian, I would have a really hard time. Now I have the excuse that my health was not, doing great, and maybe I could be vegetarian a couple times a week, or something like that. But it's so hard because I'm so into eating meat right now that I'm trying to catch up for the last 14 years, which, by the way, I'm gaining weight because of it. But still, like, I feel so good physically, like, strong. I feel so different from when I was vegetarian. Now, and mind you, I was very good at being vegetarian. Like, I ate very healthy and try to eat, as much protein as possible through, grains and different things. But still, like, somehow my body just, eventually got really weak, and it just couldn't do it. Now, that's just an example, but another thing people can do is not use plastics. And gosh, like, everything uses plastic nowadays. Like, when you go to the supermarket and they put everything in a bag, like, I get that right now it's important to, do certain things, but then they're using plastic so crazy. Like right now, like when you go to a restaurant because you can't eat there, you have to get it to go, and they use plastic for a lot of things. And it's just plastic here, plastic there. And this plastic, stays in our planet. It doesn't go away. It's starting to build up, and we use it more than ever in the last, 100 years or so, where plastic has become, the norm for everything. And so those types of things are starting to become a problem, and they're, it's piling up. We're not seeing it because, our streets are clean. We try to keep everything as perfect as possible. But then you go to, Philippines, for example, and the rivers are full of plastics, and all these other places are starting to get like that. And eventually, all oceans are going to have plastic everywhere, and most recently when I last time I went scuba diving, there were so many plastic bags in the ocean. It's just really scary, and we're not
Hmm.
paying attention to those things. And those are things we can do now, like when we go out to eat, to bring some kind of container to get our food on. But all these things are so hard because right now, because of the pandemic, we can't really do certain things, and so it's a tough thing.
It is, but again, the silver lining with the pandemic is like I was in San Diego a couple weeks ago, and I just happened to want to stop into a Starbucks, and so I went in, ordered my coffee, and two things that were kind of funny. I actually forgot how to order because it's been that long. I was like, "What is it called again?" And I'd ordered it every day for like a year, and the checker was like laughing with me. I'm like, like that's okay. This is what happens. But anyway, the second thing is I went to the stand where you doctor up your coffee. You put your sugar, artificial sweetener, cream, whatever you want to put in there. And there was nothing on the table because you have to ask for it, for safety. And I just stared at my coffee, stared at the empty table, and looked at them. And there's no reason why I couldn't walk back and say, "Hey, could I have some Splenda, or could I have some?" I just said, "You know what? I just want my coffee. I'm good. I don't have to put all that crap in there." You know what I'm saying? I really
Yeah.
don't. And I didn't. And I went back to my car, had my coffee black. I actually don't mind it that way. Some people I know are going, "Ugh, I can't." I get that, but I'm saying for me, I prefer it when I go to Starbucks to doctor it up a lot, actually, with almond milk. And actually, I had them put soy milk in it, steamed soy milk in it before I left. So I had steamed soy milk in there, and just the coffee, but no, nothing else. No cinnamon, no anything else that you normally put in, and I was fine. And I didn't even for like 30 seconds. I felt the implementation of change, of lack of something different.
Hmm.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, I could never." Yes, you can, because you have before. You've done it before. And if under certain conditions, if you had to change, of course, that's the essence of taking your freedom away. You would resent it for that reason, but you could change. You could adapt. You could do without. You could do something differently, even if it's like a tiny little staple that you do every single day that you say, "I couldn't live without my dot dot dot." I guarantee you could. If you find a way to live without your dot dot dot, I guarantee that you could. We just have it. We form a habit. We form a habit within a sort of a mental paradigm that we can't give up certain things that keep us going on a regular basis, our own personal staples. But yes, you can. I mean, I got
Hmm.
into the car. Was I disappointed? Yeah, for 12 seconds. I could take 12 seconds of disappointment if you tell me I'm going to save the forests or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
or live 10 years longer, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I just, again, it's like it's the little things. It's really the
Hmm.
moment to moment things. We're talking about bigger topics, but look at the little moment to moment things. First of all, the things that you've had to give up, the things that you've had to modify, and or things that you think you can't modify, but the tiny things, the littlest things that you do daily that you think you quote need, then you actually don't. You know what I'm saying? And it could, over time, you'd be amazed at how much you could actually adapt. you know
Hmm.
and then
Oh
people
yeah.
say, "Why don't?" Yeah, people might say, "I don't want to adapt." It's like, but that's what we're talking about, because nobody wants to.
Yeah.
This article got written. So yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
the
It,
little
it
things.
it
Yeah.
really is, a decision we need to start thinking about. And it doesn't have to be like a 360, we, like I said, maybe we can start doing little things. Like for example, not using straws. I know some people absolutely
Hmm.
love their straw. And I know some companies are now doing, paper straws, and some people hate the paper straws because after a while they just basically become useless. And it feels different, but those little things can start to make a difference. Because if you think about it, and let's say you go out twice a day to eat and you get a straw twice a day, that's a lot of plastic, in a year. So if we just stop using that, I know some people have bought metal, straws, for example. That is a useful thing. Um, but even then there's still a lot of things we need to think about, like are just our habits. Like, why do we need to have a straw? Why can't we just use a cup just directly and change that habit? Why does it have to be one way or the other? Like, can we just think of our survival and start to think of ways to keep ourselves going and motivate ourselves to do some changes? And I know it's tough. I know it's not easy, but think about it. We're talking about the collapse of our society. They're giving us 20 to 40 years. I mean, it's starting to
Mhm.
become a thing. It's not easy to say, but at the same time, I mean, there's still a 10% chance we will survive it, and I'm sure we'll eventually come up with things, but still, it has to come from us. We have to start it. Nobody else is going to do it unless we do it, and we start thinking differently, and stop thinking just for ourselves, but everybody, because this, especially if you have kids, if you've already brought your kids over, don't you want them to have a better planet or a better place for them to survive on? And those are the things that we need to think about. And we're running out of time, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a lot to say about this. I mean, maybe we're some things that we missed. Maybe there's some things that you don't agree with, and I get it. I
Mhm.
I feel the same way in some ways, but I think this is a conversation we need to get started as soon as possible, which is why I thought it was interesting to talk about this today. And I don't know if you have any last words, Neil.
I do. I mean, it's a huge topic, and there's a lot of debates and a lot of different areas of debate that could be opened up from the topic. So I know it's a very seems like a very basic, large basic idea that could open up a lot of different areas of thought. So allow those areas of thought to open up and just continue to think about how the littlest implementations of change, little changes lead to larger changes. They always do. And there's a theory in psychotherapy, one of the approaches that says that people are always changing. They don't
Mm-hmm.
recognize that they're always changing, even if they're static, even if they're stagnant, even if they're stuck. That's the way they change. That's their process of change, is that there's a certain plateau that people live through, but you are always changing, however small, however infinitesimally. So just look at those infinitesimal ways and try to reduce it as much as you can, and recognize that you're always changing. It's not a question of changing, not changing. There's a fluidity to it. And even
Yes.
if that fluidity takes a long, long time, look at humanity. We've always been changing,
Mm-hmm.
always, from the
Yeah.
from the inception. Even when there are periods where it seemed that we weren't, we were. So that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll come up with ways, but again, it comes from us. We all are a part of this, and we all have a say. And, we start by setting an example, practicing what we preach. And so I think it's important for all of us to start doing it today and think of ways that we can change, even if it's a little thing. Just stop using straws, for example, or, stop using plastic bags and bring your own bag to the supermarket. And simple things. And again, if you have comments or questions or concerns, just send them to us, and we'll happily talk about it and continue this conversation. If you have ideas that we can use, just post them on the comments here so people can look at them. And just let's talk about this. Let's get it out there. Let's start thinking about, what if this is true. Some people may not think this is true, may not agree with it. Okay, maybe I'm going to post the link on the bottom of the description so you can read this article if you want, and then tell me what you think about it. And let's just talk about it and see what happens. And I guess we'll remember, we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. If you have any concerns, send them to us either through our Facebook MindFit podcast, or you can also do it on YouTube, which we have our YouTube channel, MindFit Podcast. Or if you want to send them our direct message to us, you can do that too. Just look for Neil Babins or Robert Aceves, and you can find us there. Thank you, Neil, for your time. And thank you to all those people that listen to us every week, by the way. Thank you so much. People that are
Yeah. Thank
donating to
you.
this podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good. See you next week.
Thanks, Neil. Bye.
All right. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.